Hey, it's Classic DM, and we're going to come back here with another introduction to first edition AD&D, pretty much for new players. This is going to talk about the magic of the original game and how to get playing. And we've been going through all the classes. Our last episode, we went through the fighter, talked about the versatility of the fighter. And today, or tonight, or whatever time of day it is happens to be for you, we're going to talk about the Paladin. And you may remember when we last left off, we had this map from our Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. We're just using this as a talking board for the different class. And on the right, of course, is the signature image for the Paladin from the player's handbook. And I believe this is on page, what is this on? Page 23. This is the classic image for the Paladin that everyone always imagines. You know, it's almost like Diablo. You're standing there in full plate mail, you've got your sword and your shield, you're like a Knight Templar, and you're facing against the masses of hell. That has to be this character here, right? Let's just get a, let's just do a zoom distance on this and an autofocus difference on this. So this is going to have to be, what do we do here? Let's do this way. There we go. Let's point the light up here. I love this mini. This thing, I can't wait to paint it. Okay. This is from Pathfinder, actually. Goodness gracious, dude. Hold it still. There you go. Full plate mail. Turn it this way. Full plate mail. Huge shield. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. Okay, anyway. So let's go back down to the ground plane. I love the Paladin. Paladin's fantastic. Paladin in World of Warcraft. Paladin in EverQuest. Paladin in any MMO, Paladin in any game, they're always wonderful. And I'm going to zoom the camera in a little bit. Let's just focus on that Paladin a little bit and get a sense of what they're doing. Let's go to our player's handbook and talk through what they can and can't do. So, in essence, what the Paladin is all about is like a holy warrior, just like you expected. It's like half cleric and half warrior. Now, they have a few limitations. Let's just go through it here. We'll go one column at a time, and I'll zoom this in a little bit so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay? So the Paladin is a character, a subclass, unlike normal fighters. They must be lawful good in alignment. Boom, right away. That's one of the first things you're going to have to keep in mind. So that means no, let me give you an example of situations a lawful good character would not do. Okay, a lawful good character would not execute someone in cold blood. A lawful good character would not kill a lion stuck behind a cage that can't get free. A lawful good character would not wouldn't murder someone in cold blood. They're not such a goody two-shoes. They wouldn't defend themselves against, being attacked by orcs. Lawful good character would not tie an orc to a pole and slit their throat. Those kinds of things. So you can read about alignment in the player's handbook and a dungeon master's guide, and you can figure that all out for yourself. But that's a limitation. So there is no such thing as a chaotic good or chaotic neutral or lawful evil paladin. Of course, you could say there's an anti-paladin, and we always had those in our campaign, which just means the exact opposite. Which I think the exact opposite of a lawful good character is chaotic evil. So you wouldn't be lawful evil, you'd be chaotic evil. So they always remain all lawful good or absolutely lose all their special powers which are given to them. So that's kind of tricky. That's like saying being cast out of the church or something if you look at world history. That's one thing about the Paladin that's kind of strange. That kind of limitation was, when they first created that, was probably along the lines of trying to keep it tied to chivalry or Knight Templars or things like that. If you're in the order and you're accepted and you take a vow, you need to maintain the vow, otherwise if you reject your vows, you no longer a part of the group anymore. So this is where this theming is coming from. They have fighting abilities, but they have limited spell powers at higher levels. To become a paladin, they must be human, have a strength not less than 12. So remember, the fighter only needs a strength of 9, minimum intelligence of 9. Oh, no big deal. Wisdom of 13. That's a little bit better. That's not about the same as it takes to be a cleric. And minimum constitution of 9, but not less than 17 charisma. So the charisma number is really, really high. Now, a lot of people think that charisma means like good looks. That's not really what the stats for. It's about a leadership ability, personality, how convincing you are in your arguments, articulate you are, how well you are at inspiring others, your aura, your Rick James aura, whatever you want to call it. The charisma stat in the game is a lot more powerful than people give it credit for. The problem is in the actual player's handbook, it doesn't give you a lot you can do with it except control hirelings. But as a statistic, as an ability score in any role-playing game, you can use that charisma roll for anything. So 17 is high. Remember, in the core game, the stats are from 3 to 18. So this is the top of the food chain when it comes to charisma. So that's a big limitation, but they don't use charisma as a statistic. I think in 3.5 or 3.0, whoa, you have to have charisma like used by the sorcerer or something, or the bard. So it's very, very different for the paladin. Let's go over here to the second column. Here we go. This is where I misread this earlier. So both strength and wisdom are in excess of 15 to get 10% experience bonus. That's where I got it confused the last episode with this fighter. It's been a long time because we never used that rule. Law and good deeds are the meat and drink of paladins. If they ever knowingly perform an act which is chaotic in nature, they must seek a high level above cleric, a lawful good alignment, confess their sins, and do penance as prescribed by the cleric. I mean, this is basically being lifted verbatim from Catholicism. You can always interpret that to be whatever you want it to be. Obviously, the inspiration is drawn from the Middle Ages when there's knights. This isn't being pulled from Assyria and Babylon. It's not being pulled from Nazi Germany. It's not being pulled from the Korean War era or from the Civil War, and there's all kinds of epochs in human history. It's not being pulled from the Roman Empire. This is being pulled right out of the Middle Ages. So this stuff didn't even happen to be in the Renaissance. If the paladin should ever willingly perform an evil act, he or she loses their status of paladinhood immediately and irrevocably. All benefits have been lost, and no deed of magic can restore the character of the paladinhood. He or she is forever after just a fighter. I had that happen like once, I think, and the entire time I played D&D, the first 4, 5, 7, 8 years when the game first came out. It was because we had a person in our party who was a paladin. Their goal was to play the paladin as a warrior priest in a way, kind of like a warhammer. Throw out some heals, throw out some buffs, but run around rampant and just destroying the devil out of anything they wanted to. And we had one DM running a campaign. I think it was Hidden Shrine of Timoshon, and we had a paladin in there. And he did something vile. He tried to execute the thief who tried to pick pockets from someone else. And it was, instead of passing judgment and talking to the thief and working through it, he tried to cut his hands off like an eye for an eye thing. And the DM stripped his paladinhood. Those kind of things are pretty extreme. You're not really going to encounter that. Just show the player, listen, if you're going to play the paladin class, I'll give you the full benefits of the paladin class, especially the innate ones, okay, which we're going to go through right now. For example, detect evil up to 60-foot distance as often as desired. That's pretty nasty. So let's just say this space here was dark, okay? And it's not very much light going on. And you are in this area as a paladin, and behind this rock are 2 evil winter wolves, okay? Just pull the camera out just a touch. If you're being careful, it's almost like a thief detecting traps. You could detect in a 60-foot radius that there's evil nearby. Remember, each one of these is 5 feet, right? So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Is this a radius? Up to 60 feet away. That means a radius. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. This entire chamber on this map, this entire room, they can detect evil. That doesn't mean you can tell which way it's coming from. That's a key point that a lot of people forget about. It's not like casting the spell or find and remove traps. If you had your rogue and he's doing find and remove traps, if you've ever played the Baldur's Gate games, you know the infamous whistling sound that happens when a trapdoor plate appears in the ground, going whoosh, like that or something. So that's not what this is about. It just means you could detect that evil is nearby. There's our little picture of our little trap on the floor that our thief would be able to detect and see it, things like that. So that's not really what that's about. But what it means is nearby there is something of evil. So if you just had animals that are neutral, they wouldn't pick up on that. So if there's a bunch of frost giants down this corridor and you can't see them, you could detect it's evil, but you would have no really sense of whether the evil is this way or the evil is that way. So it's okay to have this detect evil radial effect, but it doesn't mean you can tell which direction. That's one thing about the first edition it isn't always super clear about. Let's just put these kids together here like this and get the lights going again. So let's go through some of the other abilities. Make all saving throws with +2. That's great. So if you look at the saving throw tables in the first edition, and we'll pull this out a notch. Here they are here. So if you were this is for saving throws for clerics, druids, and monks, and then to the right of that is magic users, illusionists. These groups are always grouped together, and here's one for fighters, paladins, rangers, and bards. But you get a +2 in addition to this. So if you're a level 10 paladin, let's go down here to these are attack tables. Let's find the saving throw table. Sorry about that. This is attack for monsters. Here we go. So clerics, fighters, magic users, and thieves. Remember, the paladin gets +2. So say that there was a dragon and it decided to blast a breath weapon at you. So this is a small little young dragon, white dragon. Say it was going to do a cone of cold or something like that, a breath weapon that's blasting across the landscape, across this big cavern and its lair like that. It's going to hit you. Okay? You may be part of this is obscured. This part here is if you play World of Warcraft, that's a good place to stand, right? So you won't hit there, but let's say you've determined that you're right here. This is your square. You're standing right here, and you're the paladin. You're going to get hit the full frontal force of that breath weapon. What does that mean for you? Well, let's say you have to save against a breath weapon or take half damage. So what you do is you look at the fighter table here. You say you're a level 10 paladin, right? Level 10 breath weapon, you need a 9. But because that statistical ability that's not mentioned or taken into consideration on this table, you actually only need a 7. And that's not taking into consideration any of the other things you might have, like a protection ring or something that gives you resistance to frost. So you need to roll a 7 or higher as a paladin to resist that. Whereas if you had a warrior standing right next to you the same level, he would need a 9. Okay? And that's probably because of the reasoning behind that would be that, well, you're like a holy warrior and you're protected by good and you're doing everything that possible to, be defensive and use the power of your gods and goddesses to do things good. So it's kind of like an innate ability, the more protectivism type of a theming. So the next one, you can have immunity to all forms of disease. There's not a lot of situations in D&D First Edition where disease comes into play. Now, there is in EverQuest 1. If you're playing a shaman, you all know about that. But there could be, and there could be situations. I mean, no one usually runs a campaign where, like, oh, all of you feel like you're getting sick. You're running around the swamp for 6 months, and all you've got cholera. That doesn't really happen. But there may be monsters and enemies, especially some demons, especially if you love Warhammer enemies, you integrate them into your campaign, where attacks could be disease-oriented. So the paladin is going to be immune to that. What's really nice to being immune to is poisons and stuff, and I think the monk and some of the other characters get that. Let's just get this out. Let's get our paladin back here on the feature film roll. So what else do we have going on? Whoops, sorry about that. Haven't put the mount on that one yet. Brand new, just opened it up. Ability to lay on hands, either on others or his or her own person, to cure wounds. This heals 2 hit points of damage per level of experience the paladin has attained, but laying on hands can be performed but once per day. But once, you mean it can only be performed once per day. So they did that in EverQuest 1, which, Daiku Mud-oriented game. So you and the fighter in the front lines here, and you're kicking some butt, and you're killing this frost giant, and you got one frost giant down, and the second guy's coming along, and he steps on top of the corpse of his friend and nails this, and then you realize another one's got this guy behind, and your fighter buddy's down to 40 health, and you're a level 10 paladin. Instead of just doing DPS trying to kill things, you could just turn and just reach over and touch him, and touch your buddy, and then you would immediately heal. If you're level 10 paladin, 20 points of health healed instantaneously. No cast time, don't need to take the gloves off, no verbal, somatic, material components. Wow, that's nice. Could have been more powerful. If you play World of Warcraft in the arena, you know that lay hands is a complete full heal, and it's the same thing in EverQuest 1, which is much more useful. I consider this to be pathetic and weak. It's less than a crappy potion. If I were you, I would actually probably give you at least 5 hit points per level, because that way you could actually completely heal a monk or completely heal a paladin, and you can only do it once per day. So if you're exploring a dungeon and clearing 10, 15 rooms over the course of 7 hours, that means you only lay hands once. So either let them do this more often with lower numbers, or let them do it once per day with really powerful numbers. That way it's a real Joker kind of card to have to play. The next one, the ability to cure disease of any sort. Well, like I said a few minutes ago, disease doesn't come into play much, but if it does, this can be done once per week for each 5 levels of experience. If you're level 10, that means you can do it twice a week. The week thing is very funny. First edition, like I said in the other episode, it kind of has this war game kind of vibe to it, where there's all these rules about having hirelings and building a keep and a castle and attracting people to come live in your village. It kind of sounds like a Civilization game by Sid Meier. It's not really like that, and people don't usually play the game that way. They're just playing the heroic characters, blasting through dungeons and adventures, being a hero, like a protagonist in a book. So, curing disease once per week, if you're a really good paladin player and your party is coming to a town and the DM's got a situation where everyone's a bunch of people with disease and the paladin wants to do a Jesus moment and start curing disease for multiple people, he has to pick the right number of people that he can heal. I mean, that could come into play. But in combat, on a moment-to-moment basis, room by room, in the Glacial Rift of Frost Giant Jarl or in the Vault of the Drow fighting Lolth, not going to come in handy very often. The continuing emanation of a protection from evil. A 10 at 1 inch radius. Remember, in first edition, when they say 1 inch, they mean 10 feet. So this grid on your battle grid, this is a radius, okay? So let's just clear this out, make sure this is really clear. This is really important. A lot of people get the distance numbers from a radius number confused. Let's say that you're standing right here, okay? This is a 5-foot square, and your paladin is occupying that 5-inch square. A 1 inch radius, okay, is going to really just go from the center of this point, that's 5, is to the center of this point. But to keep it simple, I suggest you just add it like this. So you're going to have 10 feet in each of these cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, like this. Okay, and it's a circle, right? Hey, look at the pattern it makes made, right? So that means that this is really the radius. I would go from the edge of the existing square. So that means if this person is here, or you've got your druid in here fighting with alongside you, and you guys are facing the frost giant here, and you got the winter wolf trying to chop on this guy here, these are going to give people bonuses from the spell. You can look up the spell yourself and figure out what it does. I believe it gives you like a multiple armor class or +1 to saves or something. But that's free. That's just happening all the time. So that's really nice. Now the Paladin in Dark Age of Camelot could twist a lot of different chants and do lots of bonuses to damage and stuff like that. The Bard in EverQuest chants lots of songs. That's wonderful. If you really want to take this Paladin and make him incredible, you know, give him some interesting chant buffs that he can mix and match and add together. But that's really up to you. So now, once you get these other abilities like 7, 8, 9, and 10, these become added to your pool of abilities as you gain levels. So let's just clear this out while we talk about that real quick, okay? So at 3rd level, what do you get? What do you got up there? Let's get this kid out of the way. Let the druid hang out with the paladin, right? At level 3, the paladin gains the power to affect undead and devils and demons as if you were a 1st level cleric, and the power to go upwards each level experience. The paladin also at 4th level affected as a 2nd level, then at 5th as if you're a 3rd level. So once you hit 3rd level, you suddenly have some of the turn undead type abilities that a cleric has at 1st level. So that can be a little confusing if you've never played a cleric. So what you want to do is you want to zip back to the cleric real quick. And there's the druid here, and maybe it's like a page or two back. They'll have the ability to turn undead. And there are tables for this. So turning undead is a situation where you've probably seen it in films before. Like the priest is holding back a silver cross. He's telling this demon to get lost and all this kind of business. Anything that's considered undead in the D&D universe, whether it's ghast, ghouls, liches, mummies, shadows, skeletons, specters, white. Here's a list right here. You can turn them. That basically means that using a holy symbol or doing some words or saying some prayer, you can make that evil, diabolical, undead creature turn away and flee, right? So turning undead is very, very powerful. So if you go to the DM screen, I believe there is a turn undead table in here somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I had to play it, but there is a turn undead table in here somewhere. And I can't find it fast enough. I'm not going to dwell on it if I can't find it. But in essence, read about the cleric and learn about how to turn undead, because that's going to be an ability you're going to pick up as a paladin that will come in handy every now and then. Saving throw for magic objects, a psionic attack, psionic attack tables. Let me see if I can find it real quick. What usually happens is there is a turn undead table where the monster gets a saving throw. Weapons and armor, detection of invincibility. There we go. I knew it was in here somewhere. My memory's not failing me, even though it's 40 years later. Here we go. Matrix for clerics affecting undead. So let's say you're a level 3 cleric, and you had, I don't know, a bunch of skeletons charge you, right? So you have to roll this number. This is how many you can level the cleric attempted a turn, type of undead. What does this number stand for? 10, 4, 7. The number gets lower. Okay, so basically here's how it works. You got to roll this number higher on a d20. That means it becomes easier until you get to a point where it's actually they turned. And if you get it really high level, here's the definition right here. So, procedure: a d20 is rolled, the number shown is matched or exceeded. The die rolled, the undead are turned from 1 to 12. 7 to 12 creatures are affected. So, okay, let's do this on the table here, right? We'll just use, I got some zombies in here buried away. And this is just for the paladin purposes, right? In fact, let me just get these over here so we can see this better. Okay, let's just put this down here. Here's a undead dude. So here's a paladin. And here is a cleric. Side by side. Cleric's level 3, paladin's level 6. So they have the same number. So you have to say it's a ghoul, okay? And say we're both level 3. So I need to roll, you got to roll a d20. You got to roll a 10 or higher. That's a 1. If I would fail the turn, that means it's not affected. Then the paladin gets a chance to roll 10 or higher. Maybe say you roll a 17. That means he successfully turns the undead. Now, if he gets higher and higher level, he's a level 8 or higher, different effects happen. So T right here, the symbol indicates automatic turning, where the influenced by the evil cleric actually divining away the good cleric. So all you have to do is say, I'm going to try to turn undead. You don't have to roll a d20 anymore. It just automatically happens. So now a D, This is really nasty. The symbol indicates that the cleric has automatically brought the undead into friendly status or destroyed and damned them. That's really, really nasty. This is something that a lot of people don't realize how overpowered it is in the first edition, because it doesn't appear in any other editions ever beyond that. So they've even put notes down here about the paladin of first or second level can be turned by an evil cleric. So if you're playing an evil cleric, you could turn a paladin, all right? Which means that, if you think about it, let's say that the cleric was a level 10 cleric like Eclavdra, and you're playing a paladin, she could come up to you and turn you, and she could actually destroy you or turn you into a friendly status. And that's something that would rarely happen unless you have a very, very smart DM. Anyway, so not get off on too much of a wild tangent here, but be sure to check this table out. It's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's also in the DM screen. It gives you a sense of what the number you need to meet or beat to turn the different level of undead. Like Lich is way down here. Special will be probably like the cleric I was talking about a moment ago. Shadow, Wights, Gas, Wraiths, Mummies. Gives you a sense the descending number on this y-axis gives you the power level. So let's go back to the player's handbook and let's get back down to our paladin level. So there's a druid. Here's a paladin. Third, this next one here, 4th level, anytime you're after a paladin may call for his warhorse. I thought this was a brilliant ability. They tried to do this with a Crusader in Diablo 3. So you can call for your warhorse. This creature is an intelligent, heavy warhorse with 5+5 hit dice. That's actually quite good. AC 5, the speed of a medium warhorse, 18 inches. That's very, very quick. A player can run 12 in a round in combat. 18 is pretty quick. Not as fast as a monk, okay? So if you look at Eliphanisi, she can run 24. Where is she at? Here she is. She can run 24, but that's just unique to the monk. The monk's considered almost like a superhuman human being. Having a warhorse that will magically appear, but only one is available every 10 years. So if that one's ever lost, you must wait until the end of a period of time for another. That rule's pretty brutal, but it's so overpowered otherwise. Imagine being in the middle of a dungeon and being overwhelmed by a bunch of frost giants, summoning your warhorse, jumping your warhorse, and riding down the hallway. So that's pretty incredible. But once the idea behind this is once you've summoned your holy warhorse, it's bound for you to ever. It's a real one. It's not some magical warhorse. So this doesn't say summons a magical warhorse temporarily, like one of the abilities in Diablo 3 allows you to do that. This is summoning an actual real warhorse forever. So you don't need to buy a horse. Think of it that way. Let's go down to here. If the paladin has a holy sword or a magic sword, which your referee is aware of and explain to you need it rises, you project a circle of power in a 10-foot radius in the diameter when the holy sword is unsheathed and held. So this is something a lot of people don't think a lot about. Let's do this again, okay? So we say, this is a situation about the holy sword. We say project a circle of power in a 10-foot diameter, okay? So that means 5 this way and 5 that way, not 10 this way. So that means that this is the square that you're standing in. This is your center point. This is the radius. You draw your weapon out, and you've got the druid standing right next to you in the adjacent square. But this cleric is, say the other cleric is in the front lines up here, and the warrior's in the front line here. Here, it's not going to affect them because they're not totally inside of the circle. They're just barely touching it. So that allows you to, it has the power to dispel magic. Now that's fantastic. So useful. For example, in our last episode of our Glacial Earth Frost Giant Jarl campaign, Mercedes got charmed by an Ogre Magi. If you haven't seen the episode, you should check it out. I think it's 11 or 12. If there was a Paladin in the group, the Paladin would have understood this. So we have Mercedes here. She was charmed. Zolars was holding her at bay. They were fighting one another. He was just trying to defensively knock her down on the ground. Everyone else was standing back going, oh my god, what do we do? The Paladin could have run forward, drew the sword out, and tapped her on the shoulder or pulled the sword over her head and would have dispelled magic around her, and then she would no longer have been charmed. That's a very, very powerful ability. It's almost like a cleanse. If you ever played the Paladin in World of Warcraft, their cleanse ability is brilliantly done, right? You can use it all the time. I think even the Shaman had it, but it was on a long cooldown. So if you're playing a Paladin, use this ability. Especially if you have a holy sword, you want to get a holy sword, because if someone gets webbed, there's darkness, someone's casting a ground effect target spell, anything in the game. There could be a gate, all these kinds of things. And there may be some rolls you have to do to make sure it works, but being able to just dispel magic at any time, just because you have a holy sword, you could do this at level 1. So that's very, very powerful. But you need to make sure you follow the rules of the spell itself. Okay, so it's just a dispel magic spell at your disposal. We're almost done here. At 9th level through 20th, the experience gain to employ cleric spells may never use scrolls or spells, however those are normally used by fighters. So If you have a scroll, like you said before, a scroll of protection that fighters can use, yes, you can use the Paladin. But if you have a scroll that says cast heal, you can't do that. But you do get, this is another point here, you do get the ability to cast cleric spells, but they're not the same level. Here's another point. They may never retain more than 10 magic items. So if you're playing a cleric, you're playing a paladin, you're not going to be running around with a massive treasure trove of goodies and stuff in your inventory. So you're not going to have like 2 giant slayers, a bunch of rings, and a cold wand, all that kind of stuff. Think about what kind of gear you want to equip. So it's kind of a monastic type of perspective of things. I think that makes it more interesting because the paladin only needs particular things. They're lawful good. Remember, they're not this greedy, chaotic, neutral thief. Maybe 4 other magic items, up to 4 weapons, 1 shield, and 1 pseudo armor. These includes daggers and swords, bows and crossbows, all that kind of stuff. So that's something to take into consideration too. It allows you to have more personality for the class than it does to limit you. Don't think of it as a limitation. And let's go down these last few points here, and then we're going to be done with this. They don't really retain wealth. They only keep sufficient treasures to maintain themselves. So remember, the paladin's not interested in collecting gold. If you're playing the paladin, despite the temptation to want to collect a bunch of gems and jewelry, if it's not something that you really, really need, your paladin would just pass on it and let someone else take it. If you do have any money, you're supposed to tithe it to your church, to your deity. That's a rule that's always interesting to play when you're playing a paladin in a town environment, like you're playing the Village of Hamlet or you're playing the City-State Invincible Overlord. You know, be sure to do this stuff. That's part of the character class. Think of it as paying for your powers. They will have henchmen of lawful good alignment. That's, once again, it's the henchman type thing. We've talked about that before. If possible, pals will take service of form of alliance with lawful good characters, whether they're not of noble status. This is just saying that if you have a lawful good character, they don't mind joining force with them. They do not attract a body of men at arms as do fighters. Once again, this is a rule set that doesn't usually happen very much. Here's all the level titles: Gallant, Keeper, Protector, Defender, Warder, Guardian, Chevalier, I think that's how you pronounce it, not Chevy Nova, Justicar, Paladin of the 10th circle, 10th level, whatever, etc. Then you get spells. Here's the good part, and then we're going to go to Ranger the next episode. The Paladin can cast Cleric spells. Now, that only starts at level 9, okay? That's pretty high. Let's say you're level 10 Cleric. If we had a level 10 Paladin in our campaign right now, here's a level Assassin in our party. Say we had a level 11 Paladin. He can cast 2 level 1 Cleric spells. That's this right here. That's not very much, okay? But it's better than nothing. If you hit level 20, which is pretty high level, you can cast up to level 4 level Cleric spells. So don't be too excited about thinking that you're going to get cast as many spells as a Paladin as they do in 3rd edition or maybe even in 5th edition. But the powers that the Paladins have, that, in my personal opinion, the ones that they have that are just so absolutely amazing is turn undead, get a holy sword, have your own warhorse, bonus to saving throws, immunity to disease, detecting evil. A lot of these comes without you having to do anything, with no resources to pay for in any way, shape, or form, and you're still able to melee just as good as a regular fighter. I encourage you in your campaign to have your DM give you a rule set for Lay of Hands. Lay of Hands is where the turning point is for the Paladin. If you're going to have a wonderful, cool Paladin in your party, give them something powerful for the Lay of Hands. Once per day, complete heal. Twice per day, 5d8 or something like that, or give them a fixed number, 20 points, 40 points, 1/2 your health, 25% your health, etc. Okay, that's it for the Paladin. We're going to wrap things up here. Hope you had fun with talking about this one. Maybe one day we'll have a Paladin in our party. Who knows? Maybe our party will meet some in their adventures. They got lots more modules to go through. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and everything else. You just do YouTube videos. That'd be cool. If you have any questions or comments about the Paladin, give me a shout, give me a comment, and I always reply to everyone. Take care, and we'll talk to you again real soon.